External web services. The external web services allowed us to work with third applications, obtain data from their databases, and use them in Aura Quantic. We can also return the data modified so the other external database gets updated. Let's see this with some practical example so we can see how this works. So for this, we are going to use an application named Salesforce. If we go to the REST Customize class, we can see the Salesforce contact option. In this case, the connector is going to allow us to create contacts via an Aura Quantic process and obtain contacts through an ID that we previously defined in Salesforce. Let's first review the configuration windows. We can see we have several tabs, and in this case we have information in 2 of them. We know that because of the blue tick. In request, we have a structure that Salesforce facilitates us and that we have to configure. And in response, it will be the same. In request, we will add several panel fields that we can see start with 3. And they will be mapped with the parameters in Salesforce that are waiting for our panel values. Response works in the same way, in a similar way. Salesforce returns a parameter with a value in ID and one in performed. And obtain contacts will work in a similar way. We don't have any data in request, and in response, we will have all the mapping of the parameters. Let's go to start a process now to see how this works. Let's see how a web service that connects with Salesforce works. So as I said, let's start a process. And now we need to add some data here. First of all, remember we defined 2 actions in the process. The first one is going to create a user in the Aura Quantic process and export it directly to Salesforce. And the second action will obtain the data of a previously created user in Salesforce and bring the data to Aura Quantic. As I said, let's see how it works. Let's add some information. And then click on the button Create Contact. And as we can see here, we just got an ID contact. What we did, it was just to call the web service through this button and create a new user in Salesforce. So let's leave this now. Let's copy this one, the ID, and let's start another process. And in this case, instead of adding the data here, we're just going to add the ID contact and click on Obtain Contact. And we can see that now we just got all the data that was in Salesforce, and now we have it in Aura Quantic. Through this button, okay, we made a call to the web service configured for Salesforce, and through the get method, brought all the data from this user in here to Aura Quantic. As you can see, we obtain all this user's data in Salesforce immediately, and in Aura Quantic as well. It's an immediate process. Let's have a quick look at the process to see how all this has been configured. Okay, let's leave this and go to the process. And let's go to the IAM form. Here, we can see we only have to add the fields we need and the buttons. If we look at the configuration of the buttons, we can see that it's a system task. Okay, a connector was REST service and is to create a contact. And the other action button would be just to obtain the contact. And this will be all for customizable web services. Now it's your turn to proceed with exercise 507. Thanks for listening.